Are you serious? Are you serious? Get some coffee and calm down. But Vladimir Putin has weighed in here. Putin is hinting at a war in Ukraine, but maybe seeking a diplomatic edge actually, okay? Which would be a negotiating strategy, is to threaten war, but to really look for a negotiation. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin speaks to the Azerbaijan president during their meetings in Azerbaijan, trying to come up with information about what's going on in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Ukraine says it thinks Vladimir Putin is planning a new invasion, and it's not hard to see why. The Russian leader has built up troops on its border and resumed the hostile rhetoric that preceded his annexation of Crimea 2 years ago. But despite the appearance, some experts say Putin is more likely seeking advantage through diplomacy than on the battlefield, at least this time around. It's about sanctions, said Andrew Kordonovov, Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council, a Moscow-based foreign policy think tank close to the Russian foreign ministries. It looks like a way of increasing pressure on the Western participants in a peace process, he said, of a peace deal set up for eastern Ukraine, where pro-Russian rebels have battled against the government forces. And we know that Putin has sent in some Russian troops and tanks and armored vehicles and little green men, they call them, which is basically Russian soldiers that don't wear any patches identifying themselves. But for 2 years, Russia has been under U.S. and European Union sanctions over its annexation of Crimea and support for the separatists in eastern Ukraine. European leaders say that the sanctions cannot be lifted unless there's a peace deal is implemented. And for now, it looks like with fighting occasionally flaring up and both sides blaming each other for failing to implement the truce terms. This week, tensions escalated dramatically after Vladimir Putin threatened to take unspecified countermeasures against Ukraine to retaliate for what his spies say was a plot to bomb targets across the contested Crimea. Putin said 2 Russian servicemen were killed in a clash with the Ukrainians that were sent to Crimea. Now, Kiev says the incident never happened and was concocted to create a phony pretext for a new invasion by Putin. And the United States and the European Union also say there's no evidence it took place. Whether the plot is real or was imagined, Moscow has cranked up its military activity in Crimea at the same time as holding a series of what it says are pre-planned war games and missile deployments in the area. Putin, who is expected to visit Crimea later this week in a show of support, convened his Security Council and canceled the next round of international talks meant to turn the shaky ceasefire in eastern Ukraine into a lasting peace. Can it happen? Now, folks, I want to say something. When Vladimir Putin's car was hit head-on, killing his favorite chauffeur, I've seen the videotape. You've all probably seen it. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate assassination attempt on Putin. Obviously, they didn't know whether Putin was in that car or not. And, of course, every president of major nations sends out decoy cars so that, you know, if somebody is trying to plot an assassination, you're not sure which car the president's in. But this was a clear message. Someone was trying to assassinate Putin, or at least send him a message. Was it the European Union? Was it the United States? I mean, was it the Ukrainians in operation with the United States or the EU? Somebody was, and believe me, this might be why Putin is turning up the heat as it relates to this situation, because I'm telling you right now, Putin is upset, but he will not say anything about that. He won't say anything. He'll just step up another level of situation that and put pressure on the West. And believe me, the winter is coming. If Putin decides to invade Ukraine, take over the oil pipelines, he will control the energy flow for all of Europe for this winter. He could do this. He may still do this. He has 90,000 troops along the eastern Ukrainian borders and along the NATO country borders. And he's got another 40,000 troops sitting in Crimea along the border with Ukraine. He could make a dash for the capital of Kiev while securing or going into a battle. He could also, so a two-front attack from eastern Ukraine and from Crimea up toward Kiev. Believe me, he can do this. And that's why Mike Brown, the World's going to be with us today. I'm going to ask this question. Can you tell us what all is going on? We know the Black Sea is full of battleships by the Russians, the Americans. There's nuclear subs floating around. The Chinese are moving around. We got North Korea, setting off nuclear bombs underground, threatening Japan. Japan threatening to go on the offense on North Korea. South Korea saying that if North Korea even turns a nuke in their direction, they will blow their capital off the planet. So this is ugly. And the Chinese, what's going on here? Are you serious? And the United Nations is going to be gathering here in just a few weeks. And the whole, what's going to be the, two-state solution, Israel? What's going on? Are you serious? Are you serious? It's getting very serious. Give your life to Jesus Christ, because we're living in times of wars and rumors of wars, just like Jesus said it would be in the last days. Are you saved?